Hi, this is the Social Jello with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Jello with Angelo show.
This episode of Social Jello with Angelo podcast is brought to you by the Pit Online Dojo. Check it out. UFC coach John Hackelman has seats available for you to train. For under $20, you can jump in and train with a UFC coach on Zoom. Audit his program. You can earn a black belt. That's a different price. But for $20, you can check out the entire program and train. Thank you. And let's get started with the show. What's up? And welcome to another episode of Social Jello with Angelo. So, this is it. Evolving your martial art with age. How do you split the time? So Rickson Gracie needed a hip replacement surgery when he was in his 60s because of a lifetime of fighting. And this begs the question, is Jiu-Jitsu really the gentle art? So a lot of martial arts in general will say you do martial arts for longevity. You know, you have this whole health aspect. And any martial artist you talk to says, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Doesn't matter what style they practice. They will say this to you. But the reality of the situation, and I'm not trying to pick on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here in particular, but I have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does put us out there as the gentle art. But at the same time, every single book, so far I've read several books on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, several martial arts lifelong journeys, and they always get to this point around 50 or 60 where they start saying stuff. They won't outright say it. Rickson didn't outright say, I couldn't spar anymore. But you hear him say, he went from this, like, in my 40s, I realized I couldn't professionally fight anymore, which is pretty average for most people. And he's an MMA fighter, so get it. Right. And then around his 50s or 60s, he's like, I decided to get into seminars in the seminar circuit, and I would no longer roll with people from a standing position. So there was already like I know what that's like, because right now I injured my LCL, and I'm not rolling from a standing position either, because I'm trying to avoid re-injuring my LCL. So what do you guys think? We'll start with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as gentle as everyone says it is? Why or why not? I normally end with Claude. So just for Claude's sake, I'm going to start with Claude. So go ahead, Claude. What are your thoughts on this?
Usually I'm at the very end of everything.
Yeah. Oh, wait, sorry. Oh, man. This far in, and I didn't tell you who anybody was. This is Claude Lawson. This is Weston, Simonis. Claude Lawson's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and coaches out in the East Coast area. Where exactly?
I'm in Maryland.
In Maryland. And then Weston Simonis runs his own program. It's called Backyard Jiu-Jitsu, is that right?
Yeah, Backyard Jiu-Jitsu. I'm just a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but
yeah, and he's
still got enough knowledge in it.
Yeah, and no one's hating on you. So yeah, so he's a coach. He's a Brazilian coach coming out there. Me, I'm Angelo Ferrer. If this is your first episode, I'm an MMA coach, a brown belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, and also a Kaju Kempo practitioner and instructor. Third degree.
I think all of us are Kaju Kempo practitioners,
something like
right?
that. One of those things. It's either 3 or 4, something like that. I'm a black belt. That's all you need to know. All right, Claude.
All right. Is Jiu-Jitsu the gentle art? Of course it is. Gentle art. In your way of practicing it, there's so many different aspects of Jiu-Jitsu where you can practice it at a slow pace, at a relaxed pace, whatever. And the way you can apply, submissions is also much better than getting in a ring and throwing full blast punches at someone. You can't really stop a punch once it's fired unless you're just going, at 50% speed. But along with that, you are doing joint manipulations and chokes, and even people don't realize when you're doing your chokes, you're doing manipulation of the spine. So over time, whether it's jiu-jitsu, kaju kempo, any art, if you're having any kind of contact and manipulation of any joints, something's going to give sooner or later. And people's genetics are different. I have degenerative disc disease, so in my spine, jiu-jitsu really took a toll over time, but so did kickboxing in hard style Kajikembo training. You know, all the hits and strikes. Um, it's all in the manner of practicing, and it goes along with age and time. Over time, anything wears out.
And then just to add to what you just said, Claude, and for those of you who don't know what Kajikembo is, at the end of this episode, UFC coach John Hackelman, I get together with him, who's Chuck Liddell's coach, and we talk about what that is. For as much shit that the internet talks about Kempo, because they do, I'll be honest, they talk shit about Kempo. No one likes Kempo. I'll tell you that right now. I love it. Public still hasn't really figured out what it is, and this podcast isn't about trying to figure out why that is the way it is. But what I can say is that there is something that happens even in Kempo. One is that even if you are in a softer art, quote unquote, in big quotes on this one, because I argue that Kaji Kempo is not a soft art, especially the hard style that I'm about to talk about. You can still get really hurt just doing demos, just being a guy who they call an uke, which is the guy who gets beat up in a self-defense demonstration. And to give a standing example of this in our art of Kajikembo, there's I think it's like a senior grandmaster. He's up there. He's like one of the top people there. His name is his Facebook name is Sifu Gary Forback. That's his name on his Facebook page. That way I don't get in any title disputes about what that is. But I said both of his titles. But he's high up there. He's a high-ranking Kajikembo guy in what we do. And he recently disclosed all these surgeries he had to have on his neck and his spine. And mind you, most of his competition wasn't like what you would see today with jiu-jitsu, with like full contact competition. You know, when you do jiu-jitsu, it's full contact. It's not punching, like you said earlier, but it's still full contact as far as how you get taken down. It's still full contact as far as how you get submitted. No one's going 50% when they pass your guard. And he didn't go through that, right? He competed more in the karate circuit, did more of the points part, stuff that you would say would keep you a little more safe, but he advocates against being a full contact uke. That when his injuries came from other martial artists demonstrating techniques and letting the other martial artists hit him, and particularly in the back of the spine. Like a lot of the techniques in the art we do will have like a hammer fist or a strike or an elbow to the back of the neck right here around the spine area, and you get hit in the spine. A lot of those, what you would consider a bullshido move with the chopping and slapping and what looks like fake hits, to a guy, a coordinated attack, as they like to say, and the internet attacks this stuff all the time. In our art, a lot of these guys were really beating the crap out of that guy. And he talks about, please don't do that. Please be careful with your. So just to give you an example, and now he's dealing with the repercussions of that. So just a clear example of how you go into something thinking you're going to be, it's going light, like you said, you know, you're trying to take care of your body, but it ends up being not so gentle as you get older and it accumulates. So same question over to you. Jiu-Jitsu, the gentle art. What are some of your experiences with this, Weston?
You know, it can be very gentle at times. You know, just moving around with an opponent, you know, nice and light, just practicing flow rolls, you know, from technique to technique. That could be all light, you know, moving into an arm bar slowly. You can even do throws slowly if you know how to do them and slowly. But when it comes down to being hard in jiu-jitsu can really jack you up. I mean, I've had my head slammed in the mat one time taking the guy's back. A new guy came in, I took his back, he stood up and he tried to do a forward roll on his feet and slammed my head right into the ground, gave me a concussion and broke my nose all on that one slam. And he didn't know he was doing something wrong. But that was right there, that hurt so bad, man. I had vertigo and I was spitting blood out of my mouth for probably 2.5 weeks due to it because it broke my nose. It was not good. So I think jiu-jitsu in a way has gotten more soft than it used to be from the past with the Gracies and doing all the MMA stuff versus now we are looking at people doing all this inverted guard stuff, being on the ground, not worried about getting punched like it used to be back in the old Gracie days. I mean, I grew up on the old blue belt system where we had to do the punching and all that, you know, guard guard retention stuff where you had striking in it and you had to do all this punch defense stuff along with all the basics, you know. Now you go to a school and they give you a belt. Oh, you've been here long enough. We think that you roll like a blue belt. We just scoot on our bum. We don't do any throws on the ground. We don't practice any punch defense. But here's your blue belt. So I think jujitsu in a way has gotten softer in that aspect because of the people don't want to get punched. And I don't mind getting punched because I'm a Kaju guy. But, like again, right there, you were talking about Gary Forbach had issues. I got my ribs punched in once and from being the Uki and Kaju Kembo and broke my ribs. So martial arts in itself, man, is not gentle. Even jujitsu. I mean, a good throw could end your knee, it could end your head, it could end your back, you know. And if you don't know how to fall right, you're even screwed worse. So, jujitsu in itself, I wouldn't really call it gentle when it's done fast and hard. When you're grappling in a tournament, it's not gentle anymore.
So,
But
yeah.
when you're in school training with your buddy, be nice. Don't destroy him so he can't train tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good distinction there, right? It's gentle up until you compete. It can be gentle, and we can argue that about Muay Thai kickboxing as well. It can be gentle. In fact, the training is pretty gentle, to be honest. A good Muay Thai school in Thailand doesn't do full contact. They save all the full contact for competition, but then they make you compete full contact every month, once a month. So then, okay, right? But again, I think the reason we're not bagging on jiu-jitsu, but we are bagging on jiu-jitsu is because they have the slogan, the gentle art. That's really why they have a big target in this conversation for it. Is Muay Thai kickboxing is not advertised as a gentle art. Kaji Kembo is not advertised as a gentle art. I know you guys don't know what it is. Whoever's watching right now doesn't know what this is, but we don't advertise it as gentle art. We don't have slogans that say Kaji Kembo for everyone. Not to pick on any one Gracie school that does have the slogan, but we don't have that slogan. It's a great slogan. It's awesome. On paper, it attracts a lot of clients and brings a lot of people in. But shameless plug, last week we did on this show with a different panel of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, has Jiu-Jitsu been watered down? And we have a conversation about whether it was watered down or not. That was a good one. If you want to check it out here, there's a link to that. But
I just think I covered that a little bit too.
yeah, you touched on it a little bit. That's why I want to say, like, we're not going to go down. If you're interested in that sort of conversation, there's another podcast I did on that. But you did mention, now that we've kind of nailed what the issue is, right? Because the title of this podcast is Evolving Your Martial Art with Age. So we started off this podcast with, this is the problem. And the presenting problem is, no matter what style you practice, unless it's Tai Chi, if you're watching this podcast, most likely you're doing a harder style: MMA, boxing, kickboxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or Kaji Kembo. You're probably doing a harder style. You've competed in either full contact, semi-contact, and your training has involved something along the lines of everything we just talked about. How do you, as you age, continue to practice what we do? How do you evolve your martial art? I kind of hinted to what Rickson Gracie's answer was, but how do you personally evolve your martial art? And I know Weston's a little young, and Claude looks young.
No, I'm so not.
But
hey, I just turned 40, so I'm not too young, but I'm the youngest guy on this.
He's the youngest. He's the youngest guy on the panel. But in general terms of the public speaking, Weston is not by means a young guy competing anymore. He's not in his 20s. So how do you, in middle age?
I still compete. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah, well, in full contact MMA. like that.
Oh no, no, I haven't done that in a while.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm going to be very specific on the terms here. So middle age and on, what are some adjustments that you have made to continue to be able to do what you love and still teach what and still practice and do the things that you want to do as you move forward? And again, we're going to start with Claude because I always end with Claude. So
And I won't just say, I won't just go. I'll say what I do, but I'll just say some people around my age or this age demographic. I won't say exactly, but you have to cut down on the contact if you're talking about stand up or what have you. With jiu-jitsu, you've got to change your roles, in my opinion, to more flow and technical role versus just straight, going for it. I'm not saying you can't do that at times, but you got to pick and choose your partners. And throughout the jiu-jitsu community and even kickboxing, everybody talks about is that you got to pick your partners who you spar with, who you roll with, because you can't roll with all the young white belts or even some of the blue belts, because if you're a higher belt, you're a target. Okay, so you have to pick and choose your roles. With me, I shadow box more. I target, hitting the bag. I don't hit the bag as hard as I used to. I still hit to give my punches a termination point, but I work on angles. I change the way I visualize a spar. I've sparred so many times I can visualize just about anything in my head. And I know some people say they can't do it, but I can imagine a fight and I can fight that fight using my current skills and still shadow box and hit the bag that way. My repetitions are a lot lower. I don't do as many rounds. I elliptical versus hard running, even though there are times where I will pick a time to run. And the contacts to the body, to the torso, I can still take those pretty well. I mean, we harden up over time, especially doing kaji kimbo and kickboxing. But my joints, because I can still move well, but because I'm careful with my steps now, because I've had ACL surgery, I tore my LCL, meniscus, I've had LCL on the other side, meniscus on the other side. I have herniated discs in my lower back, and I have spinal fusion 6 and 7, herniated discs from C2 through C5. So I understand Great Grandmaster Forback very well, who's actually he's in my line for Balegu Rez. We come from Nahulewa and Richard Peralta, the first two black belts of Balegu Rez. So those hard hits, those hammer fists behind the neck and all that, that's part of this. And it's also part of this, and my neck is from getting neck crank in jiu-jitsu. So it's just accumulation over time. And like I said, everybody's is predisposed to certain injuries depending on your genetics. And there's some people out there that never get hurt whatsoever, you know? But for the majority, if you're going into any martial arts and you're practicing for a lifetime, you want this to be your lifestyle, you're going to get hurt. It's just minimizing that as much as possible, taking the best care of your body. So I changed the way I practice. I practice it as smarter, not harder. And before it was balls to the wall and as hard and fast as I could go.
and you mentioned genetics, which is interesting because I was just watching George St. Pierre talk about a training routine he likes to do, and I think he's maybe, how old is he now? How old is George?
He's in his 40s now, right?
He's in his 40s. Here, let me just type this in real quick. George St. Pierre. Make sure I spell this right real quick. George Pierre. He's 43. Oh, I'm gonna be his age next 2 months. So yeah, I'm 42. So he's a year older than me. He's a year older than me. And I'm sitting here as a 42-year-old watching his little workout routine going, damn, that guy's got good knees.
Everybody's different.
He was showing a clean and press deadlift routine. He's like, you can get this workout done in 15 minutes to hit all your muscle groups. And he was going between a clean and press, shoulder press, and a deadlift and a squat to hit all three categories in 15 minutes. And I'm just watching him go all the way down and all the way up. I'm like, damn. So, man, fought full
Not my knees.
contact, fought full contact, and his knees are that good. That's so. Weston, how do you adjust? I'm gonna stop talking about my fanboying of Drew St. Pierre. Weston, how do you adjust?
Well, I feel as we get older, that physical fitness is the top. You got to be strength training. You got to be doing that cardio and keep pushing for that, because if you don't, I call this the couch kung fu. You end up getting so chunky you can't do anything, but you're sitting on the couch because it hurts everywhere. The less you move, the more you hurt. So, physical fitness is one of the most high parts on my list when it comes to keep training in the martial arts. But just changing your approach can definitely do you a lot more. I've gone through knee injuries, neck injuries, rib injuries, hand injuries, foot injuries, and learning to train around those is sometimes it sucks quite a bit, especially when you got like a toe and you broke your big toe. You just jammed it, and it came from doing an osotogari. You're trying to throw this guy in an osotogari, and you freaking jam that toe right into the mat, and you're just like, oh my gosh. That happened to me just a couple years ago on Team USA when I was in England competing for the World Championships, and it was not fun, man. I mean, it sucked. But I had to change my whole approach of training in my school around my foot. And I had to adapt every exercise I did to not push off of that toe. So my jiu-jitsu, my kembo, everything changed to that foot. And so when you get older, you're going to have to start changing how do you do your side kick now. Are you going to do your side kick to the head like you did when you were younger? Probably not. You're going to probably kick the knees and the groin and the hip line. That you're probably not going to get up there and kick this head. Our high roundhouse is going to be in your game? Probably not. But in jiu-jitsu, are you going to be doing inverted guard a lot when you're old? Probably not. You're probably not going to do a lot of inverted guard when you're old. You might do like this much just for a few seconds and you got put in a move. But other than that, you're done. You're out of it. You're getting back to your basics. You're not going to be playing these high moves that you see some guy do. And some of those moves are really hard to even pull off when you're actually grappling. So, you're going to get back to just doing those basics and being strong with the basics and being structured with your basics. I mean, that's what I'm going to have to say. When the older you get, the more you're going to go back to the easier basics that work. I mean, I'm gonna use my frames the best I can in the most basic way and use my brain to. If I'm blocked this way, okay, I'm gonna go over this way. If I can't go that way, well, I got my T-Rex arms this way. However you're gonna do it, it's gonna change for you. You could have a shoulder injury. You could be working off that shoulder injury, and how you work around that shoulder injury is, off of you. What motion's gonna work? Is it hurt this direction going up sideways, or is it hurt coming forward? Which way are you gonna work around it? The worst thing to do is to stop training completely, because that's when you're going to be the dicky-doo couch kung fu.
So
once you stop, you start to lose it.
If you don't use
What was that?
you'll lose it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Hackelman just did a video on that did really well. He was talking about, because he's in his 60s, and he was talking about how to keep using it. So this brings me to my answer to the same question. And you mentioned running. Claude mentioned running. Like, you move over the elliptical, but you still want to run. And I've done extensive research on the field of geriatric training. So like, that's the technical term. But it's essentially old man training in layman's Old people training is what I'm really interested in. I'm not that old yet. I know a lot of older folk look at my podcast. Come on, this young guy giving advice to older. I get it. I get it. But the deal is when I see training, the first question I ask myself when I see any type of training, whether it's martial arts or physical fitness, is I look at the demographic of people that can do it. And if I see a lot of literally what we would define as a senior citizen, people from the ages of 65 and up doing whatever activity it is, I'm immediately thinking that's something I can probably do. Because depending, I say probably because I've already accumulated injuries to where I'm at right now. And a lot of times when I see a senior citizen doing something, I have to always think about, well, maybe they probably never did martial arts. Like maybe all they did was trail running their whole life, and all they did was ultra marathons their whole life. So now at the age of 90, 80, they still have the ability to do a 100-mile ultra marathon. And you'll see this. So you got to be careful with that, what I just said too, like about if you see a senior citizen do it. But one thing that down the line, and I've said this before on my show, and I'll say it again, down the line consistently I've seen is triathlon. Whether you decide to compete in a triathlon or not is up to you. But triathlon training is low impact. It's cycling, it's swimming, it's minimal running. And in fact, you can get rid of the running altogether and just do duathlon, cycling and swimming. And whenever you look at this, and another thing, can you do it injured? That's the other question that always comes up in my head. Can I do it when I'm old? Can I do it injured? Crazy thing about triathlon, I get rid of the running. And when I was doing my physical therapy for my torn LCL, and the way I tore it wasn't even doing jiu-jitsu. I tore it teaching a jump kick, which is going to lead me to my next question in a bit. It came up when I was looking at the research about rehabilitation for my knee, what kind of physical activity is recommended, and cycling and swimming immediately came up. Like as soon as the doctor clears you for physical exercise, you can do cycling and swimming. This is just universal for whatever injury you have. Once you're good enough, once you're healed enough, once you can move again, the physical activity they recommend is cycling and swimming. Cycling on a stationary bike, and then once you're better, back on the road if you want to do it outside. But cycling and swimming is something you can do, and that's something that's in the repertoire of rehabilitation. So that's something you can keep in mind. Now, last question. How do you teach what you can no longer do? This is about evolving your martial art as you age. And I just hurt myself trying to teach and this is a move I took out. I took it out of my personal training, but a student was asking me the dynamics, and I decided to step in and do it. And I already know what I should have done, and I shouldn't have done it. And it was a jumping. How do I explain this? It's essentially a spinning jump kick, spinning wheel kick, a spinning jump wheel kick. And this is a move that I took out of my repertoire a while back because of the spinning part. I can do the jump kick part, but the spinning part puts a lot of pressure on the knee as you land the kick. You're landing with your weight and you're spinning, and puts a lot of pressure on the knee. And I realized after this last time injuring it, because I've injured it with this kick before, that this is no longer something I can personally do. So then my question to you is how, this is in a jump kick scenario, but we talked about inverted guard right now. And we talked about some more dynamic moves in jiu-jitsu. It could be in the framework of jiu-jitsu or in anything for that matter. But how do you, as a coach, instructor, teach something that you can no longer physically demonstrate because of injury, to avoid injury? Claude.
Usually, the mechanics of any technique are the mechanics regardless. They never change, and all three of us, I'm sure, from the moment that you first learned that kick until you injured yourself, you had done it and you had memorized the mechanics of it from the get-go. So breaking it down, maybe even writing it down and walking people through it step by step, I'm pretty sure you could do that. The issue is going to be the flow of it. Like, how did they get into the kick? Because just spinning roundhouse is what I think you're talking about. And that's with any technique. You have to break it down step by step. For jiu-jitsu, it would be where the leverage is, where you can add, cut the corner as far as mechanics. It's just breaking this. It's breaking the technique down to its ABCs, to its basics. And the hardest part is actually showing the flow of it when you can't do it. I mean, that's the basics of any technique, pretty much, is to break it down to its basic components, to its step, and then figuring out how to apply pressure.
All right, Weston.
I'm kind of gonna have to go off with what Claude's got there. Break it down into bits and pieces, like segments. Hey, this is how I get. Here's where you turn. You're gonna turn over this shoulder. Show them to turn around that shoulder. And then apply the jump as you're going. Doing something on that aspect. I would just, if you can't do the whole jump spin piece, I would just break it into. Here's the spin. All right, and then while you spin, and then you jump. Just a straight jump, and then roundhouse, because I mean, sometimes you got to look after yourself. Well, all the time you have to look after yourself. And if your knee can't perform the next day, you're not teaching, you're not on the mat as well as you were the day before. So,
you're still that instructor. You're still that man. You can teach it.
Yeah.
And then here's what I've been thinking. Especially right now that I'm recovering, I was thinking about how, and now I'm going to be bagging on a style. Is this move really necessary? That was something that came across, especially for this specific instant. And it's actually, you guys are saying it was a jumping inside roundhouse. It was actually a jumping outside spinning crescent kick. But
the tornado kick.
Kind of, but the tornado kick in Taekwondo, you land with your feet together, but in Wushu Kung Fu and some styles of Kajikembo, you land in a horse stance, which puts even more. Which puts even more. The tornado kick's jumping on the inside. We're jumping on the outside. So the tornado kick is a jumping inside crescent. This is a jumping outside crescent, and this comes from this comes from Wushu Kung Fu specifically. And then you're supposed to land, if you do it right, you're supposed to land in a horse stance. And then more advanced versions, you land on the same leg you kicked with. Now, this brings me to the other thing. After I got injured, that injury I got, there was a parent in class that watched the whole thing happen, watched me get hit, watched me fall on the ground. It's super embarrassing. Super embarrassing to hit the ground while teaching and be moaning in pain and hobble away and have your students check on you. Not a really good feeling. And still teach class and push through it and throw a knee brace on and pretend that you're okay just for the sake of getting the class done. The parent told me she was a gymnast. And in gymnastics, there's a lot of moves that require dynamic movement that put you in those kind of positions. And she had to retire from being a gymnast. She's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do the move. I can't show the move. And in her specific field, it's gymnastics, right? So it's a sport. It's not martial art. It's not based on self-defense. So they're going to have movements in there that are not based in anything else aside from aesthetics for certain performances. And it had me think a lot about that kick. Am I performing this kick because it's practical for self-defense? Or am I performing this kick because it's aesthetically pleasing during a demo? And then it got me thinking one other question. If I know I'm teaching a kick that can potentially injure my student when they get older, is it worth teaching this kick? Claude?
Each individual instructor will have to look at, why do you teach what you teach? What is the purpose of what you're teaching? Is it street self-defense? Don't want to overuse that. Is it competition? Is it aesthetics you just want because it's cool? You have to figure out what it is and why you're teaching. I'll give an example. My jujitsu is all with strikes. I gear all my jujitsu training with strikes. I don't do upside down anything because you get punched in the face. I'm not saying that there's stuff that isn't practical for tournaments or competition, but that's not what I teach. I know I've chosen my path of how I want to teach jujitsu and how I want to teach it along with my kickboxing and my kaiju kimbo as one system or type of system that I teach. So that will dictate if you should teach this jump, spinning, crescent kick, or what have you. You may have some people that are athletic that will love to learn it. You have the expertise to teach it. But in all practicality, if that is not your goal in what you teach, then you already have the answer. It's not something you should or you feel like you should be obligated to teach. My
Weston.
2 cents.
Weston?
You know, some kicks, you just got to look at them and are they actually really practical? I mean, the older you get, the less you're going to do any of those jump spinning kicks. So in practicality, if you don't want to teach the jump spinning crescent kick in your school, then don't teach it. You don't need it. Just like Bruce Lee says, the hands set up the feet set up the hands. Do I need to kick above the waist? Probably not. Leg kick, groin kick, foot kick, knee kick. It's all you really need. I don't need to knock you out with a roundhouse to the head. Can I do that still? Yeah, I can still do that roundhouse to the head. But does someone need it in their arsenal to protect themselves? No. So as the instructor, I'd say that's your choice to decide if you don't want to teach it or not. You could, if you have a student that wants to do it, you could be like, hey, I can't do these anymore because of my problem. But, excuse me, I can break it down with you and give you little bits of pieces of how to practice it. And just don't do it the whole thing. Just break it down, you know. If your student wants to learn it, let them have it, but you don't have to perform it because it hurts you. You don't need it in your curriculum.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I asked this question to have the discussion openly so anybody watching can kind of formulate their own answer for this, right? Maybe they're going to something similar, maybe they're not. Maybe they're going to keep it. Who knows? If you're a jiu-jitsu guy wondering, well, this is outside my wheelhouse, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Rubber guard. It is all I have to say to you is rubber guard. If you're an older jiu-jitsu person, you're trying to bring this into a context that you're trying to figure out for yourself, then the question can be applied outside of a crescent kick directly to rubber guard. Is rubber guard something you want to cover? Because even Eddie Bravo recently has said, even though he created the rubber guard system, has said, at my age, I can no longer spar. I'll teach you. I can teach you the rubber guard. I can go over the rubber guard. I can demonstrate the rubber guard. I can demonstrate entries, but I'm no longer going to be using this in sparring. I'm not going to be sparring. Period. He's free rolling, but he's not doing any more hard rolling again. So, and Hackelman, and then for anybody, always for more answers, Hackelman was, you can always ask someone. I have another student who can perform it. At my age, I have younger students, so I can have younger students who are more athletic who can perform it. And Hackelman was telling me, as you age, a lot of the stuff, like Weston was kind of alluding to, the high kicks. You were saying earlier about how hard you can hit the bag, Claude. Like, I can no longer hit the bag with the kind of power. And to get around this, Hackelman, UFC coach John Hackelman's advice was, when we had a private conversation, was, you have the younger, stronger students demonstrate it to show what it looks like with someone with 100% power. And he was talking about how he loves a spinning side kick, but he's not, he can show you the movements, but he's not going to be sitting there doing that at full blast anymore. He'll say, I'll let someone younger, more robust do anything that involves dynamic movement, was his answer to that question. All right. Well, for those of you watching, hopefully you got some different perspectives on how to evolve your martial art as you age. For those of you younger folk watching, it's coming for you. If you thought this conversation was not relevant to you, if you stood around this long and listened to us ramble, obviously it's because you know it's coming for you. So, so it's
Definitely is.
yeah, it's coming for you. Whether you want to admit that now or not, it's coming for you. So if you can start thinking about this now, and I'll just keep, I always talk about triathlon training because I just did a triathlon before I injured my knee. And I thought to myself, damn, I can do an Olympic triathlon. I did it in record. I beat last year's record by 30 minutes. I went that much faster. My first triathlon, I finished in 3 hours and 35 minutes. So I beat it by 20 minutes. And this triathlon, I finished in 3 hours and 10 minutes. It's like 25 minutes faster than last year. And that's an Olympic triathlon. That's a 40 kilometer. Oh, kilometers. Okay, shit. I always lose people on this. It's like here. Let me do the math real quick.
Like that.
All right, this is for my American friends. Because if I start speaking kilometers, you're not gonna understand what the hell I'm saying unless I relate it to Ford trucks or Big Mac burgers. So here let's put this in miles for you. It's the swim is 0.93 miles, the cycling is 24.8 miles, and then the run is 6.2 miles back to back. So there you go.
So about 3 miles altogether.
Right? Yeah. Actually, yeah. If we put all the mileage together, it actually calculates to be about 32 miles of cycling, swimming, and running.
With 32 miles?
Yeah, about 32 miles. About 32 miles. About 32. Yeah, 30, 31. About 31 miles because there's like points in there, 0.8, 0.2. So about 31 miles. And again, the swim is under a mile. Most of it's done on a bicycle, and the running is only 6.2 miles. So like I say only because if we start talking about marathons, those numbers go up quite a bit. All the running is done. Right? So like, why do I say this? Because the training is split up to it. What does the training look like? And I always advocate for this for anybody who's interested because you can do this at any age. The training looks like running less than 3 miles once a week, a 30-minute. They don't even suggest doing the 3 miles. For the actual training, what they suggest, if you were thinking of doing a triathlon, an Olympic distant one, if you run for 30 minutes once or twice a week, if you're worried about your knees, once or twice a week of easy running, 30 minutes. Cycling for 1 hour twice a week, and then swimming for 30 to 35 minutes once or twice a week. You can do all these things once a week. If you're really old, you can do these things once a week. That means 1 day, rest day, 1 day, rest day, 1 day, rest day. And if you just hit one of these categories, not even twice a week, it'll build the cardio endurance necessary to finish before it all wraps up, but within the allotted time. And to give you an example of this, my first Olympic triathlon, I lost to an 82-year-old.
Wow.
I met an 80 right before I started the race. When I was training at the grounds 2 weeks before, I met an 82-year-old who was getting ready for the race, and he's done it a few times. And then when I got to that competition, he was there. He's like, "Hey, Angelo," he's a Japanese guy. Hey, and we're talking Japanese. Like, "Hey, you're gonna do it." I'm gonna do it. Like, okay. And we were in the same, and we were competing. And we started up, and I was in the zone. I wasn't really paying attention once I got started. But when I finished, I get to the finish line, and I see him sitting in the chair in the finishing corner right as I sit down. So he finished like just a few minutes before me. And I sat down next to him. Like, "You made it." I'm like, "Hey, you made it." We made it, right? And then this year he was disappointed that I beat him. So, but I thought, but still, like, just to give you an example, right? He's 83 now.
Wow.
And he's still doing it. So just to give you an example, if you hear me talking like this, you're like, that sounds impossible. Sounds like something I can't do. Yeah. And even right now, like my knee finally got to that point where I can run again. And I immediately started triathlon training maybe 3 weeks after my injury because I was cleared to do it. So I immediately started cycling and swimming. And now I'm back to the regular because you can still do it. So this turned into an advertisement for triathlon training. I do, but I do recommend it.
Sponsored by.
Yeah, it's sponsored by Triathlon Training. Seriously, look it up. It's not as hard as you think it is, and and the benefits are just, again, you don't want to become what Weston was talking about. What do you say? A couch kung fu master. So like to
A Dicky Doo Couch Kung Fu
yeah,
Grandmaster.
there it is. A Dicky Doo couch kung fu grandmaster. Someone who can no longer do what they love because they can't get the cardio in their martial arts training, and they don't have the answer of what everything seems daunting. Running, daunting. Cycling on its own, daunting. Swimming every day, daunting. And if you're anything like me and you like mixed martial arts, the idea of doing any one thing might not just be daunting. Maybe physically you can do it, just it's boring. So
Right.
the variation makes it much easier.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say. All right. Well, thank you, Claude. Thank you, Weston, for coming out for another episode of the Social
You're
Juggler
welcome.
podcast. One of these once a week. If you're looking for training, go to, and I said this earlier and I'll say it again, the Pit Online Dojo. This show was brought to you by the Pit Online Dojo. So if you go online, you can go to the Pit Online Dojo. UFC coach John Hackelman still has seats available for you to train. You can earn your black belt, white to black. If you're interested, for only $20, audit the entire course. You can actually train on Zoom lessons live with him in his class, in his location. This is Chuck Liddell's coach over in the Rio Grande, California. He will talk to you. He'll be there for you. For $20, you can audit a class. You don't get any rank, but you can see how he teaches his students. You can see how he runs his programs for only $20 a month if you just want to see it. And then if you want to join, check it out. All right. Catch y'all next time.